So it's a few days before Tisha B'Av. It's only natural that the topic we will be discussing today is the sugya, relevant sugya regarding coronavirus and fasting on Tisha B'Av. We spoke about this topic before Shavuos B'Tamuz in Parshas Pinchas, but today we will emphasize different points and different sources and have halachic analysis regarding fasting in times of epidemic. Tov Kuf Nun Dalet Sivav, we learn in Shulchan Aruch, Chaya Kol Shloshim, which means Yeledes, a woman that had a baby, first 30 days, V'choilish Shetzorech Lechoil, Ein Tzorech Oimed Elam Achila Noise Miyad, the B'mukim Choili Loi Gazru Rabbanon. According to the vast majority of Poskim, unlike Yom Kippurim, in which only Pikuach Nefesh could permit eating or drinking in Yom Kippurim because we're dealing with the Issacharis, the Uraisa, Tisha B'Av is different. And in Tisha B'Av, even a Chodesh She'ein Bo Sakana, it's permissible for him to eat or drink. Not everybody agrees on that point. Shalosh Teshuvos Divrei Nehemiah Siman Mem Aleph writes a letter to his Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek. And the Tzemach Tzedek's Tshuva is in Siman Mem Aleph. Divrei Nehemiah's Tshuva is Siman Mem. And the Tshuva of the Tzemach Tzedek we also find in Shalosh Teshuvos Tzemach Tzedek or Chaim Siman Kuf Yud. They maintain even Tisha B'Av, one cannot eat unless there is a sakana, at least a remote sakana, as in and his life might be in jeopardy. But that's a das yochid. According to the Taz of Magen Avraham and the vast majority of Poskim L'Dorei say, even though on various different halachas Tisha B'Av is like Yom Kippur, Tisha B'Av is the only fast day which is an entire 24-hour cycle. All the others are just Mi'alois Shachar Tzeisak Echovim. There are many other halachas in which we see that Tisha B'Av has the same din as Yom Kippur, but not regarding Chayla. And besides the Tzemach Tzedek and the Divrei Nehemiah, the other points can maintain every Chayla is entitled to eat on Tisha B'Av, even a Chodesh She'ein Bo Sakana. How do we define a Chodesh She'ein Bo Sakana? So in my Tshuvas I explained, and this opinion is based on Rabbi Yerucham and Tshuvas Harama. I quoted the sources 3 weeks ago in Parshas Pinchas, that the definition of a Chodesh regarding Tisha B'Av is the same as regarding Hilchos Shabbos, Shin Chof Ches Sif Yud Zayin, Nofal Mishkav or Cholo Kol Gufoy. That is the definition of a Chodesh. The Shulchan Aruch Lashon is Chodesh Shu Tzarich Le'echol. There are so many people today in this modern world with the advance of medicine that have severe medical conditions. But as long as they are under supervision and they take their medication, they function as totally normal human beings. They feel well, function normally. Those people have no heter to eat on Yom Kippur or even Tisha B'Av, as long as they're doing well. Because the definition of a chayla regarding Shabbos or Tisha B'Av is not a potentially dangerous medical condition, but rather, how do you feel? What is your state right here and now? And I think that is what the Mechaber means when he writes, Chodesh shehu tzarich le'echol. A person that is ill and he needs to eat, according to a subjective feeling or according to an objective medical opinion. But nevertheless, there's no need to be in sakana. Tshuvas Chasam Sofer Kuf Nun Zayin. There's an amazing, fascinating tshuva of Chasam Sofer. It transpired that the Chasam Sofer was ill and he had to eat and drink on Yom Kippur, and that is what he did. So even before we learn the lumdus of this tshuva, it's noteworthy that Chasam Sofer wasn't a frommer. He wasn't the Chodesh Sheyesh Bo Sakana. His life wasn't in jeopardy, but he ate and drank on Tisha B'Av because he was ill. And then the Chassam Sofer was in doubt. He had a suffix, could I be oila l'toira? Because the meaning of the Chassam Sofer was to be oila l'toira on Tisha B'Av by Mincha. Shulchan Aruch quotes the Maharik. If you're not fasting on Bahab, Sheni, Chamisha, V'Sheni, you can't be oila l'toira. And the Chassam Sofer writes 3 svaros to be machalek and differentiate between Bahab and Tisha B'Av. Svara number 1. Tisha B'Av is a day of mourning. Sheni Chamisha V'Sheni, if you're not fasting, it's just like any other day. It's not a day that has any inherent and essential significance. But Tisha B'Av is. Tisha B'Av is the day of Churban Bayis Rishon and Churban Bayis Sheni. It's a day of Aveda. So even if you're not fasting, it's still Tisha B'Av. Svara number 2. Even if you can't fast because you're ill and you have a heter to eat, but you still also berachitza b'sicha b'neilas asandal, there are chemishu inuyim. Svara number 3, which is a great chiddush. Even if somebody has a heter to eat and drink on Tisha B'Av because of his medical condition, because he's a chayla, but he can't eat more than as is required by his medical condition, and therefore he still is considered bein hamisanim. He still is fasting in a way, in a limited way, in a limited capacity, but he's still fasting because he cannot eat more than is required. And that's a chiddush of the Chassam Sofer. Reb Chaim Brisker's understanding, as we see in stencil Ot Mem Hey, Reb Chaim said, "B'mukem choili loy gazru rabbanon." That's the lesson of the Shulchan Aruch. So a choila has no Tisha B'Av. There is no Tisha B'Av for a choila, even a choila she'en b'sakana. According to this Mahalach of Reb Chaim, it would seem to me, lo kedivrei Chassam Sofer, the Chassam Sofer says, even a choila she'en b'sakana, but he cannot eat more than is required. According to Reb Chaim, it's not Tisha B'Av by him. Famous story of the Briskerov, and it's so typical of the Briskerov. So a person once told the Briskerov, "I'm not feeling well, and my doctor say I need to eat on Tisha B'Av, but I hope to make it, and I do intend to fast." So the Briskerov responded, "Don't forget Kabbalas Tanas Erev Tisha B'Av by Mincha." And the person was taken aback, and the Briskerov said, "You're ill, your doctor said you need to eat, so you don't have Tisha B'Av. For you, it's a Tanas Yochad, and a Tanas Yochad Tzarich Kabbalas Tanas B'Erev Tisha B'Av." So I think Reb Chaim wouldn't agree with the Chassam Sofer. I'll tell you something interesting. Nor would the Chassam Sofer Shver agree with him, Rebbe Kiva Eger. Because Rebbe Kiva Eger has a similar tshuva, Madura Kamasimin Chov Daled. Rebbe Kiva Eger deals with a similar question regarding Yom Kippur. A chodesh sheyesh b'sakona that needs to eat on Yom Kippur could be yored to Torah. And Rebbe Kiva Eger has a fascinating analysis, starting off in the tshuva and culminating in the mafteches where there is a hasafa. Tshuva Rebbe Kiva Eger Kamasim and Chov Daled. So Rebbe Kiva Eger says, l'cha'od if he's eating, how could it be yored to Torah? Then Rebbe Kiva says, why not? Every Yom Tov has Kriyas HaTorah. So why would we assume that the Kriyas HaTorah on Yom Kippur is associated with a tainus, with a fast? Probably it's associated with Mikroi Kodesh, just like every Shabbos and Yom Tov. And therefore he could be Oila. However, Mincha he can't be Oila, because Adi Yomim Tovim don't have Kriyas HaTorah b'Mincha. So obviously the Kriya b'Mincha is associated with a fast. And then Pilpul b'toch Pilpul, but if it's Yom Kippur Shechani is b'Shabbos. So every Shabbos by Mincha there's Kriyas HaTorah, he could be Oila. But Mafti Yoine, he can't be Oila, because Shabbos b'Mincha there is no Haftorah. So Rebbe Kiva Eger assumes can't be Oila. So on one hand, Reb Chaim Brisker would disagree with the Chassam Sofer because, according to Reb Chaim, he doesn't have to limit his eating at all. But Reb Chaim Brisker still could agree with the psak of the Chassam Sofer because of the other two svaros. But Rebbe Kiva Eger totally disagrees with the psak of the Chassam Sofer because all three svaros of the Chassam Sofer would apply to Yom Kippur as well. And Yom Kippur would be a Kal V'chomer, because Yom Kippur, even if you don't fast, this is the day. This is Shabbos Shabbosin. This is Kates Mechila Slicha V'Kapora L'Kol Yisrael. I'm quoting the Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva. And Yom Kippur, we definitely have Chamishu Inuyim, Yisrachitza, Sicha, Ne'ilas, Sandal, V'chulei. And Yom Kippur, we need to eat Pochos Mikashio. So all three svaras of the Chassam Sofer would apply to Yom Kippur. And nevertheless, Rebbe Kiva Eger says he cannot be oila those aliyahs that are associated with a fast. So the Chassam Sofer writes in his Tshuva in Siman Kuf Nun Zayin that because he's an Agei Bedover, he asked his Beis Din. So one could imagine that the Beis Din in Pressburg accepted the ruling of the Chassam Sofer. And I say with a little touch of humor, the Chassam Sofer knew whom to ask, because if he would ask his Shver, he would get a different opinion. So what we see in the Chassam Sofer is Choyle she'ein bo sakona shetzorech lechol b'Tisha B'Av. He's not allowed to eat more than is required by his medical condition. Does that mean he needs to eat Pochos Mikashir? I don't think so. We do not find in Hilchos Tisha B'Av Pochos Mikashir. This is a concept we find only in Hilchos Yom Kippurim. If Tisha B'Av would be the same, then it should have been in Hilchos Tisha B'Av as well. Or at least the Shulchan Aruch the Rama would make a reference in Tov Kuf Nun Daled Ayin Lekaman Tov Reish Yud Ches. And therefore I think it is quite obvious in the Chassam Sofer he writes, he cannot eat more than he needs. And if it's enough to drink, he should not eat. But the Chassam Sofer falls short of saying, Pochos Mikashir. And that is why the Maramshik is a Chidush B'Yainai. Shuvas Maramshik Semereish Peites, the Maramshik says, according to the Chassam Sofer, B'Tisha B'Av, one should eat Pochos Mikashir. I think it's not what the Chassam Sofer says. Pochos Mikashir we find only in Yom Kippurim and not in Hilchos Tisha B'Av. But we do find in Hilchos Tisha B'Av Pochos Mikashir and the Bialocha Siman Tov Kuf Nun Dalet. So the Bialocha quotes Pischei Olam, that quotes Divrei Nehemiah, that quotes the Tzemach Tzedek. In their case, the psak was even healthy people should eat on Tisha B'Av in the time of the cholera pandemic. So cholera struck many times in waves, and we find many tshuvas in Sifra Choinim. Tav Kuf Tzadik Aleph, we find Rabbi Kiva Eger's letter. Tav Kuf Tzadik Vav, tshuvas Chassam Sofer Chelek Vav Simachov Gimel. Tav Reish Tes was the famous story with Rabbi Sol Salanta that we spoke about 3 weeks ago. Tav Reish Lamed Gimel, Zeche Yosef Reish Yud Gimel and the Shoyel HaMeishav. And the psak of many Gedolim, maybe most of the Gedolim, was even healthy people should eat. And that is why the Tzemach Tzedek said, if a healthy person goes to eat, we should give him a psak, Pochos Mikashir de Bahochi. Loi nekaratanis legamre, v'rachmona libe boy. So this proves it's a feeling. It's a midas chasidus. After all, the person is healthy. Why would he violate Yom Kippur or Tisha B'Av? And that is why Pochos Mikashir even Tisha B'Av. But in the din of Choyle b'Tisha B'Av, Lani is daiti lokit divrei Maramshik, we do not find the concept of Pochos Mikashir. So why paskin before Shavuos Betam is that people that are feeling well could fast? And some people ask me, how could I paskin against the Mogen Avraham? Mogen Avraham Tov Kuf Ayin Vav, Sif Cotton Beis writes, Ho inne in our days ein onu noyagim lis anis klal b'shas hadever. The menusahu shekoilet shinui hu avia. V'ayin yoredei shin ayin dalet, sofsim shin ayin dalet. So the Mogen Avraham says one should not fast in times of an epidemic, of a megafim, because if one would fast, he is more apt to develop the disease. And based on that, Mogen Avraham, many Gedolim throughout the ages paskin that even healthy people should eat and drink. So my argument is this. The Mogen Avraham stresses, Hu idne, in our days, we don't fast on Yom Kippur. Because experience proves, koilet shinui hu avir. And I ask a very poshet and very fundamental question. So does the Mogen Avraham disagree with the Mishnah in Masechet Tanis and the Gemara in Tanis Chov Beis? Well, the Mishnah says if there's dever be'ir, if an epidemic, a plague struck the ear, every person in the city needs to fast. So they did fast in the time of a plague. That's in the Mishnah, the Gemara, the Rif, the Rambam, and the Shulchan Aruch. Even a Meruam can't be choilek on the Mishnah. Could the Mogen Avraham? So I think the Mogen Avraham stresses Hu idne in our days, because that's what experience proves. And I could suggest two different interpretations of the Mogen Avraham. Number one, just like Chazal say, Ein lecho elo shoifet shebiyomecho, shmor bedoirei ki yiftach bedoirei. Lahavdil, the same would apply to doctors. Ein lecho elo divrei haroifim shebiyomecho. So in the time of the Mishnah and the Gemara and the Rishonim, the medical opinion was that you could fast in times of an epidemic and it won't be detrimental to your health, it won't put your life in jeopardy. But our doctors say it would, and therefore we need to follow our medical advice. The second approach would be, maybe in the times of yore it was not dangerous, and today it is. Maybe we're dealing with a different epidemic. There are many different forms of epidemics, of plagues. And maybe those plagues, fasting, did not jeopardize your life, but these do. Sometimes the same virus mutates. Yesh oimrim, that even the coronavirus, that is still a little baby, who was barely born just a few months ago, already has different mutations. I don't know, but some argue that that is the Metzias. So maybe the Dever in the days of the Mishnah, fasting did not put your life in danger. But our doctors say that it does. If that is the understanding of the Mogen Avraham, I say, well, our doctors today say the same as they said for 2,000 years, from the Mishnah till the Shulchan Aruch. Fasting would not put your life in jeopardy. So I explained many times, cholera is a disease that attacks the digestive system. And patients with cholera have terrible diarrhea. And the cause of death is dehydration. So it should be no wonder why, in the days of cholera, many Rabbanim Paskin and even healthy people should eat and drink. It was not unanimous. The Reishis Bikurim was against the Psak. Zeche Yehoisef was against. But that was the general opinion of most Gedolim. Corona is different than cholera. Corona attacks primarily the pulmonary system and many other systems in your body. So the danger with corona is a compromised immune system. And that is why people that are in chemotherapy, elderly people, are in a high-risk bracket. So most of the professionals I trust and I consult feel fasting one day would not compromise your immune system. Masim b'chol yom, that people are invited to the hospital to have surgery in the morning, and they're told you need to fast 8 hours earlier. So from 10 o'clock, don't eat, don't drink, and they get in the hospital in the morning, and they wait and wait and wait. And another hour passes, and another hour, and the doctors don't say, what's going to happen with this person's immune system? So I know, if you look for stuff on the internet, this is the info age. You could find crazy ideas that are expounded by people who have very prestigious titles, PhD, and all those other letters that I don't even know what to make of. But common sense prevails, and the doctors that I consult and my little common sense, I don't think fasting one day would compromise your immune system, and therefore, just like the Magen Avraham said in his day, this is the medical opinion of our time and this is what we need to follow. I say the same. And it's not that I disagree with the Magen Avraham. I think the Magen Avraham would have a different opinion because his basic argument is either we need to follow what doctors say today, or maybe things have changed. So maybe things have changed once again. I also argue that the kavanah of the Magen Avraham, and this is what I was medayek from the Be'er Heitev on the spot, from the Berkei Yosef, from the Shara Tshuva, and primarily Zeicha Yehosef Simen Reish Yud Gimel. All the Magen Avraham means to say is that Bezmanenu ein anu goizrim tanas tzibur b'shas hadeva. Even though in the days of the Mishnah, when a pandemic struck or an epidemic struck, there were goyzer tanis and the entire community needed to fast, we are no longer goyzer tanis. But the Magen Avraham doesn't mean to say that the taniyos hakvuim zeicha l'chor mabayis wouldn't apply. That is beyond what the Magen Avraham argues. So the sakuna might be a very minimal one, and therefore we're not goyzer tanis, but we do not do away with Tisha B'Av or Shavuos B'Tammuz. And that is why I feel, in our day and age, this is the medical advice, and therefore one could fast. Chsam Sofer, Tov Kuf Tzadik Vav, Chelek Vav Simen Chav Gimel. The Chsam Sofer says we need to consult the doctors. If a person stays at home, is his life still in danger? Could he fast? Then he should fast and stay at home. You don't need to go to Shiur. But if the doctors say even when you're at home your life might be in jeopardy, then he should eat. Maram Shik, the tshuva I quoted before, Simen Reish Peites. Once again, outbreak of cholera. I think that was Tov Reish Lamed Gimel. I'm not sure. Maram Shik says, Hu ikar godol b'inyonim u'elu lishol b'das harofim v'linoi ki divrayim, and he quotes his Rebbe, the Chsam Sofer. So both the Chsam Sofer and the Maram Shik say, ask the doctors. And that is what we should do today. So, thousands, tens of thousands of people, maybe hundreds of thousands fasted on Shavuos B'Tammuz. And there was no indication that there was a spike in numbers, either of newly infected people or of severely ill people. Obviously, the fast had no effect on the numbers of COVID patients. And that proves my argument as being correct, that fasting would not diminish your chances, and therefore I think those that feel well could fast on Tisha B'Av. Those that are ill, that have symptoms, should not fast. Those that tested positive, I also think they should not fast, but maybe they should eat Shiurim, like the Mishnah Berurah and the Tzemach Tzedek regarding healthy people, because by pure halachic definition, you're not ill. The fact you do tested positive doesn't mean you're ill. A choila, by halachic definition, is a choila shenafal mishkav, or chola kol gufri. Thousands of people are asymptomatic. Yes, they carry the virus, but that doesn't mean they're ill. On the other hand, sometimes you carry the virus a few days and then suddenly you break down and you come down with symptoms, and sometimes they're severe and they develop and deteriorate very rapidly, and therefore I think anybody that tested positive should not fast. But in that case, I would recommend Shiurim. Im nofal mishkav, he is a choila, and if he is a choila, there is no din of Shiurim, as I explained before. So this is once again my opinion why I think that healthy people could fast, unlike the Magen Avraham recommendation on Psak, that Bisman HaMegefa ein onu mis'anim klal. As I explained, what he means is ein goyzrim tanas. Argument number 3. The Magen Avraham refers to a plague as defined in halacha. And the definition of an epidemic in halacha is Ir sheyesh ba chomish me'os ragli. Out of a population of 500 nefashos, not 500 families, but 500 people, if 3 people died in 3 consecutive days, that is an epidemic. Baruch Hashem, we are thousands of miles away, very far from that horrific number. 3 out of 500 means approximately 7% in 3 days perished. That's a horrendous number. We're far from that. So it is in that case of a epidemic, with those percentage points, that the Magen Avraham says one should not fast. So for 3 different reasons, I think the Magen Avraham isn't relevant, and my psak is, if you're doing fine, if you're feeling well, you did not get the disease, you definitely could fast, and fasting would not diminish your chances at all.